and I'm still 36 weeks and 2 days. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about the birth of my second son, Kai. And once again, this isn't scripted, so there may be a little bit of babbling. I apologize. I will try to be as succinct as I can. But one thing about his birth is that this story will probably be a little shorter because the labour was a lot quicker. But I do want to talk about what changed from my first birth to my second birth. And I mean, in one word, it was hypnobirthing. But there's a lot more to it than that. So let's go. Where to start? So as I said in my previous video, the midwife, a midwife that had been at the hospital class, told me about hypnobirthing after I had my first son. Like, I was still in the maternity ward and she told me, and I was like, I didn't say it to her, but I was thinking, why didn't you tell me that beforehand? I might have had a much better experience, because that was a pretty horrible experience. That's how I felt at the time. And but at the same time, I was grateful. I'd never heard of hypnobirthing, and I was really happy to have an answer, or something that might provide an answer, because as I was saying before, I had a belief that birth was natural and normal, and yet I had such a horrible experience, and I was like, how, like the two just couldn't, they didn't match. There was, I don't know if this would be the time that you would use the term cognitive dissonance, or it might not be, but it's just where we don't, like, we've got two conflicting beliefs and our brain does not know what to do with them. And so I had this deeply held belief that birth was natural, but my experience didn't match that belief. And so my brain was trying to figure out what to do with it. Does it need to create a new belief? Does it need to replace this belief, and all of that? Anyway, so the first thing I did, the moment I found out I was pregnant, was call up, because the midwife had mentioned that this other midwife was teaching hypnobirthing. So I called this other midwife up and booked in for classes. And yeah, one thing I do want to mention about how different it was when I found out I was pregnant the second time was that I did it because of all the fear and trauma from the first birth. I didn't, like, I just remember actually feeling terrified. Like I had a little panic attack, or, you know, like kind of hyperventilating. And there was just so much fear about, you know, I just couldn't go through that experience again. And that was a huge contrast to the excitement and the overwhelming joy when we first found out we were pregnant the first time. And I just found that a little sad that, you know, trauma can just lead, it just can have so many implications for how you feel about different things. Anyway, so luckily we had heard about hypnobirthing, so we booked straight into that and did some private sessions with the hypnobirthing midwife, and she taught us all about the tools and the skills, and you know, we bought the hypnobirthing book and listened to the CDs and stuff. I wasn't too much of a fan of the CD, because one of the in this case it was hypnobirthing the Mongan method, and there's not I don't want to seem, oh, anyway, I'm going to say this anyway. I'm not sure if I should say this, but I have absolutely nothing against the Mongan method, but at the time I just couldn't connect with the lady's voice on the CD, so I didn't use the CDs a lot. She had a very strong American accent that I just couldn't get used to. But the principles that I learned there were amazing, and in particular, the main tools that I used were affirmations. I'm not sure if I used visualizations too much. I did use them a lot in my third birth, but yeah, but definitely affirmations and breathing were my big ones, and maybe a little bit of visualization. It also, like, I understood a bit more about my birth. Actually, no, I must have used visualizations. I'll tell you why in a second. So affirmations, visualizations, and breathing were the big tools that I used in preparation for the birth and actually during the birth as well. And I remember it was quite an emotional time preparing, like having those hypnobirthing sessions, because it was a bit of a therapy session as well. Like there was a lot of trauma to kind of process. And remember, this was like I'd given birth only 4 months before when I found out I was pregnant. So it was all very, very fresh in my mind. And when we saw, you know, for example, like a video, the midwife showed us a video of these beautiful water births, and it was just really emotional seeing these women give birth in, you know, with such peace and serenity and power. Yeah, it was kind of emotional, like processing what I had experienced, and because that's what I was seeing in the video was what I wanted to experience. It was what connected with my like deeply held beliefs, but it's not what I experienced anyway. So there was a lot of you know, tears and processing, emotional stuff. Okay. But what it gave me so much hope. I had I remember there still being a bit of fear that I would have the same experience, but the tools just helped me to keep addressing that fear. Anytime that fear kept creeping back, like what if it's a long labor, or what if it's this, or what if it's that, I just kept, you know, the affirmations would then kick in, and I'd go, it's going to be better than last time. And I know that might seem like a kind of a weak affirmation, but that's what worked at the time. That's what I really needed to hear. And so that's what I told myself. I remember people saying that often your second birth is a lot easier than your first. And whilst I'm not contesting that, I agree with it as a general rule, I knew in my heart that my second birth would be just as bad as my first birth if I hadn't have done this mind work and this, you know, this preparation. Because the way I felt when I first found out I was pregnant, like for my second pregnancy, I was absolutely terrified all over again, and I had all of those negative emotions flood back into my mind. And if I hadn't have dealt with those thoughts and those feelings, then it would have been exactly the same. So if you don't do anything to change, then nothing's going to change. So doing the class, learning the tools was so empowering. And what I found particularly empowering about it was that these tools weren't like devices, or like it wasn't medication. It wasn't, I don't know, some kind of contraption. It was all me. It was like literally stuff in it was mindset. It was my mind. And that these are inner resources, and I found that really empowering. So anyway, one of the big affirmation that I used at the time was, I just remember standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom, telling myself, it's going to be better than last time. It's at least going to be quicker, because I now know how to relax. So hypnobirthing taught me how to relax my body, and how important it is to relax my body, and that would decrease, it would change how it felt. And I had the breathing techniques which helped me to focus, and focus is a really important thing. It's just like with my first birth, when they were putting the epidural in, I had this really deep focus to not move, and so those contractions did not feel the same as they had just moments before. So when we have focus, that changes our mindset and how we interpret sensations as well. So I knew that like the breathing gave me that focus. It gave me something to focus on. And at the time, I found it really helpful for my husband to count while I breathed. And it wasn't that I was breathing to his counting. It was more that he was counting to my breathing. But just hearing the counting, you know, I don't know, it helped me or distracted me or gave me something to focus on, as I said. So that was kind of the lead up, the preparation. Oh, and I did a lot of, so the visualization that I was particularly concerned with, as in like that I particularly used, was visualizing my body opening and by that I mean my cervix. So I was not so much drawn to abstract visualizations, or symbolic visualizations. I really like visualized my cervix, literally my cervix opening. And so I'd also done some reading as well by this point. I'd done the hypnobirthing class with the midwife, and I'm assuming she told me about, you know, books like Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. That was an amazing book, and she has lots of tools in there as well. So I learned about visualization, or it reinforced the concept of visualization and positive thinking and reading birth stories and yeah, did I already say visualization? Anyway, so I had my main mantra during the birth was open, 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 open. Because that's what my difficulty was in my first birth, that I wasn't opening. It was a long labor. It was, I sort of stalled at 5 centimeters. It was a posterior labor as well, just to make it even more uncomfortable. And so that was my big fear, that I wouldn't open, and that not opening meant more pain, and meant it would be longer, and meant it would be harder, and meant it, you know, I would need an epidural again if I didn't cope with the sensations. So my main focus was that I wanted my body to open, and I needed to believe that my body would open efficiently this time, and that I would be okay with all of the sensations, and that it would be a lot faster. So I think one of my main focuses was that I just wanted it to be faster. So I had sort of proven to myself, even though I was traumatized by it, that I could get through 13 hours without drugs. Not that I wanted to do another 13 hours, but that I could do it. But now with these other tools, learning how to relax and learning how breathing can help you to relax and focus, and et cetera, that it could be a lot faster than 13 hours. And so I wanted it to be fast. I wanted it to be okay with how I felt. And yeah, I wanted to get through it. Again, a main focus was that I wanted to get through it without drugs. And I'd sort of, because I'd tried everything at the first birth, I really didn't like the gas. So even though for some people they're like, oh yeah, but I'll just have a little gas. I'll just use the gas a little if I need anything extra. For me, I was like, oh, I didn't like the taste of it. And I think I was mainly disappointed because it didn't really do anything. So it doesn't do a whole lot of decreasing pain. Or maybe it did, but it didn't for me, because I was so traumatized by how intense it was feeling. But yeah, so I was like, well, there's no point even getting gas, and the pethidine just made me like totally out of it. I was like, I don't know, like my speech was really slurred, but at the same time, it didn't feel like it did anything for the pain. It relaxed the muscles and made you feel really out of it. But, you know, kind of like you're drunk or something. But, but it didn't actually decrease how it felt to me. So I just didn't, anyway, I didn't really want any of the drugs. And I just wanted to be able to get through it without anything. So, okay. So then for this time around, my labor started on Saturday, on a Saturday morning. And it was, I kind of just felt off. Like I felt kind of sick. So I remember not being sure if this was it, but, you know, I just didn't want the kids around. And so my sister picked up the kids, from what I remember. Actually, no, we only had one child at that point. So this is what I mean. You've got to write your birth story down while it's fresh in your mind. So there's a few little things that might be getting muddled up. But it did start at around 6 in the morning. And I remember I went straight into the bath. That was my place. That was my safe place where I had done a lot of practice relaxing and doing my breathing. And so I spent a lot of time in the bath and breathing as my husband would count to me, breathing up and breathing down. And the main breathing technique that I used was slow breathing. I found that really helpful. So I was breathing as slowly as I could up and then as slowly as I could down. And it gave me something to focus on. And while I was breathing, my husband was doing a rapid count. So he was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he could get up to about 15 or 16 before I started breathing out. And then he'd start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I just found that really useful. Now, what else? So that went for a couple of hours. And I remember that my midwife was, like, I was really determined not to have a midwife, like I wanted the midwife that I knew to be there. And it was the same midwife that was at the end of Aiden's birth. And so I'd now gotten to know her and had her through my pregnancy. And I just really, really needed her. And she was actually like sort of not away on holidays, but she'd gone away for like, she was away for the night or something. Anyway, I can't remember, but she was in a hotel. And so I was kind of thinking, oh no, I need her. I need to wait for her to get back to like the hospital. And so anyway, so I was a little bit stressed about wanting, I just couldn't do it with anyone else. So there was a little bit of a delay there. Anyway, I can't quite remember the details, but I just remember Mark talking to her on the phone, and I was doing my breathing and just a little bit of panic about I need her to be there and hurry up and get back here. But anyway, so again, we were encouraged to stay at home as long as possible. And this time I had the tools to do it. I was able to stay in the bath and just, we just kept an eye on how frequent the contractions were. And by this point we were calling them, I wonder what we were calling them. I don't think we were calling them pressure waves. I think we were just calling them waves or surges at the time. So we were keeping an eye on those, and after a little while, it really did start. It started. They were getting closer together, so we felt like it was time to head into the hospital. And I guess part of it wasn't just the contractions or waves, but it was that I really just, I wanted my midwife then. And this is what I mean about how important it is to have a known care provider, because it gives you such comfort. A lot of your, belief or trust, like, stems from, the relationship you have with them. I don't know how else to explain it, but you get a lot of comfort from their presence and confidence. So I just needed her by that point. Anyway, so we went to the hospital. We met her downstairs, and she, walked up with us, and obviously there was lots of waves on the way up there. They always put the birthing suites like at the far end of the hospital. And we had already decided, like, this time I had a birth plan, and I was a lot more prepared. I talked about my wishes and my preferences, and we talked about not wanting a vaginal exam straight away. So my midwife was totally on board, and she said, we'll put it off as long as we can. Like, we just, you don't want to just kind of come in and we do it. Like, let's hold it off as long as we can, because one of my fears was that I wasn't going to open and whatever. So I don't remember how long we held off, but eventually I think I did want to know. I needed that reassurance of that everything was progressing, because things were getting intense, and but in a positive way this time. Like, things were ramping up, the waves, the contractions were getting stronger. But as I said, I had the tools to deal with them this time, and I had a completely different mindset. but there was still that little fear that, what if, you know, this is a long, painful birth like last time? And so she did a vaginal exam, or a VE, and I was 8 centimeters. And she said, oh, you kind of almost 9. So that was just an amazing moment. Like, I was just so encouraged and so happy that, you know, in my last birth, I'd gone in and I was 2 centimeters. So for me to be 8 centimeters already was just such a victory. And that it gave me confidence. My body is working, and it's all going smoothly. And this baby's going to be here soon. And I had the tools to continue to relax and let my body open. Now, it was, even though I was using hypnobirthing tools, it was by no means a quiet birth, okay? I'll talk about hypnobirthing in another video, but in my view, a hypnobirth is any birth where you're using hypno tools, or the principles of hypnobirthing. It's not about whether you're, quiet or whatever. Like, it's not about how you birth. It's just about the tools that you use during the birth and, you know, the preparation. So just to give you an example of how different my mindset was, I remember in my first birth constantly saying, I mentioned that I was very emotional in my last video during that first birth, and I was constantly actually saying, I can't do this, I can't do this. And I was like crying and crying and saying, I can't do this. And yet in my second birth, I was saying, I can do this, I can do this. It was like, that was my automatic thought, was I can do this. And that to me was a huge transition from where I was mentally and emotionally for my first birth. So, and that is absolutely a credit to the things I learned from hypnobirthing. So I had a much more positive and empowering experience. And like, just one other thing before I sort of get to the end bit where he was born, is that when I was doing the breathing, you know, in the bath at home, but also, you know, during at the hospital, I was just constantly saying to myself, open, 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 open. So I was doing the breathing, and I was thinking and imagining my cervix opening. And that was just my constant mantra. So open, 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 open. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. Open, open, open. I can do it, I can do it. And it just worked amazingly. I actually had Kai at around 12 o'clock. I didn't look up the exact time. I'm sure I've got it written down on his little baby card thing. Anyway, but so that was about a 6-hour labor, and he came out. I was in like a supported squat. So I was kind of, Mark was behind me in a chair, and I was kind of leaning over his knees in a squatting position. And it was the most intense thing, birthing his head, I tell you. That was quite an incredible experience. And then once the head came out, everything kind of stops, because it's very common for the head to come out and then your body has a rest. And then on the next contraction, then the body comes out. Now, so for a period of time, you're kind of in this weird position. Like, I was completely naked and in this squatting position, supported squat, and I had a head sticking out of me. And anyway, and then we're waiting for the next contraction. He didn't come out on the next contraction. And that's when things got a little bit like, well, it wasn't an emergency, but it was definitely a concern, because they do need to come out pretty soon after the head's out. And so I'm not sure if we waited 1 or 2 contractions, but he didn't come out. And so there was some mild shoulder dystocia there. But we were able to resolve it very quickly once, like I said, I'm not sure if it was 1 contraction or 2, but my midwife recognized the issue. And she just said, okay, I need you to flip over. And so I turned around, and now I was facing Mark in the chair, and I was in a 1 knee down, 1 knee up, with my legs quite wide. And as the next contraction came, my midwife actually put her hand inside and kind of hooked around his shoulder, and she pulled and I pushed together with the next contraction, and he came out and everything was fine. Because it was sort of like a little bit of a, I don't want to say emergency, but it was a bit of a concern that happened. And so by that point, we did have 2 extra midwives in the room to provide assistance if we needed it. But I just remember when he came out that it was, again, just one of those amazing moments where you've just been through this really physical experience and you're like, oh, thank goodness, thank goodness he's out. But you know, it was intense but positive, but it was intense. And I remember holding him and just rubbing him, like I was just following my instincts, and I was rubbing him and talking to him. And afterwards, my midwife was like, yeah, the other midwives kind of wanted to you know, to give him oxygen and help a little bit. But I just wouldn't let my baby go because I don't know if I realized it at the time, but I certainly have this belief now that I'm not keen at all on any separation between mothers and babies. If babies need help, I want them to help my baby while they're in my arms. Anyway, but he didn't need that much help. They actually just had some free-flowing air in front, and I was blowing in his face and, you know, talking to him and rubbing him, so stimulating him. And he recovered very quickly so because of the shoulder dystocia, it can restrict oxygen a little bit. So he was a little bit what they call floppy, but he recovered very quickly. So all was good, but it was just one of those interesting moments where my instincts just took over, and I was like, no one is taking my baby from me. Like, I didn't say it, but my actions showed that I wasn't going to let anyone take him off me, and they could just come to me and help if we needed assistance. But he was all good. Anyway, so it was actually a beautiful experience and so empowering, even though it wasn't what I would describe as a painless experience. So, you know, some people might have that with hypnobirthing, which I will talk about in another video. But it was so, the hypno tools changed completely how I felt, how I thought about birth. It gave me the tools to help my body relax so that my body could do it. And, you know, in my first birth, the midwife was saying, you're fighting it, you need to relax. And so I did. I was absolutely able to relax, well, you know, physically relax my muscles and let my body open. And one thing that I would also say is that it changed, even though the end part is always going to be intense when you're actually birthing your baby. And that might mean different things to different people, but so I'll just use the word intense as a kind of vague description. But during the birth itself, like not the birth itself, what I mean is during the earlier parts, like when I was at home in the bath, I remember describing how that felt to someone, to a friend of mine afterwards, and it felt way different to the contractions that I'd experienced at my first birth. And I remember saying to her, it didn't feel like you know, like we call it like a Chinese burn. You know how you do that, you know, when you're a kid, you might do that thing where you twist the skin on your friend's arm. Yeah. All right. In Australia, we call them Chinese burns. I'm sorry if that's not a politically correct term. Anyway, I don't know why they're called that, but that's just what they're called. And it's kind of annoying, but it doesn't, like, you're not like, oh, my arm's going to fall off. It's just annoying. And I remember saying it was that level of, you know, pain. It wasn't pain. It was just annoying. You know what I mean? So to go from feeling like the pain was excruciating in my first birth to it feeling just kind of annoying, I think is a massive testament to how the hypno tools can work and how powerful they are at changing your experience, not just mentally but physically, that you will experience them physically differently to if you were tense and scared and you know, in a completely different mindset. So anyway, that's Kai's birth story. He's my number 2 baby, and he was my big bubba. He was 4 kilos, so just on 10 pounds, 10 pounds and half an ounce, and no stitches. Just have to say, I think I had a graze, but didn't need any kind of extra assistance with stitches. And just to have birthed him, you know, a 10-pound baby in 6 hours, and to have been in a much more positive mindset, and to, you know, compared to my first birth, it was amazing, and definitely due to the wonders of hypnobirthing. So I'd love to hear about your birth stories. Have you had, you know, 2 contrasting births, and what was the difference? What made the difference for you? And yeah, how did you process it all? And yeah, I'd love to hear. I love hearing birth stories, so I'd love for you to share, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.